Thank you, Marco. And first of all, just for quick concluding remarks, as I have to be by 3 o'clock at another conference, so I can guarantee that I'm going to be limited, as the planet is. First of all, I would like to say thank you for Munta for the initiative. And I think that it's very good, and also for the speakers for the great contributions to this discussion, which is an extremely timely and important discussion. Not only because what was already pointed out in the contributions from Hans and Lucas as well, that we are far beyond the limitations of the planet, and we have to face with the simple fact that the approach we had before to set up specific environmental legal texts is simply not working. It doesn't deliver what we need, and the destruction of the nature is continuous, regardless if we talk about the climate issues or biodiversity loss or water management or air pollution or things like that. So it's clearly we have to stop for a moment and to think over that it's not only because we don't have the best or the proper regulation in the system what we have, but perhaps the problem is with the system itself, and it's time to stop and reconsider a little bit how we approach environmental and sustainability problems. And clearly the current decision-making structures and the structure of environmental law can manage the externalities that this was mentioned and some effects of consumption and production, but it's not really challenging the basis of the problem. And here I share the view with most of the speakers that I think that we arrived to a point where we have to stop and reconsider how we approach the whole ecological crisis and what we can do. And finally, I think that it's time really to break up or to rethink our basic notions or concept of rights. What we think about rights basically is saying to us that to have rights, you have to be a coexistent human being. We have rights as actual citizens. But, for example, future generations do not have rights in the actual legal system. Non-human beings or ecosystem beyond humanity do not have rights. And I think that perhaps the problem is with the notion of right, the concept of right, which we have since the Enlightenment philosophy of the 18th century, and we have to do something to go beyond our actual notion of right, to extend it, to include non-existent human beings, to include future generations, to include non-human beings like animals, and also to include non-individualistic beings like ecosystems or the nature as such. And this is of course a very difficult step ahead, but as Sirpa, you pointed out very well, such kind of an enlargement of the notion of right, it's nothing revolutionary. It happened time to time in the human history, and originally the notion of the moral community included only a very small group of human beings, a tribe or a nation or things like that. And from step by step, we arrived to include all the humanity, including women, including indigenous tribes in North America or other parts of the world, to include slaves and all the human beings. And what we are claiming now is just a next step ahead on this way to include non-existing human beings and also non-human beings and ecosystem. And I believe that this is not a daydreaming. We are witnessing that it is happening. All of us know very well that recently in New Zealand the Wanganui River received a kind of legal standing in New Zealand law. Also, it happened in India with Ganges and Yamuna River. In my own country, there is an initiative to give legal standing to the Lake Balaton, which is the biggest lake in Central Europe. Not successful yet, but still there are some movements. And to be honest, this is not a very new idea. This year is the 45th anniversary of the publication of an article written by Mr. Christopher Stone, Professor Christopher Stone. The title was, "Should Trees Have Standing?" 45 years ago, it was already, the question was put on the table that is it the right way to protect nature, to set up a very complex and ununderstandable system of environmental law, or we should simply give rights to nature and to protect them. And the last thing I would like to point out is that, of course, this is important to give the rights and to move to this direction. But, and today I already spoken at 2 conferences on Roma inclusion and Roma rights. And, well, we might say that everything's all right. Roma communities, Roma people have the same rights as any other human being in the European Union. What we experience, in fact, regardless of the rights they have, there are serious problems of the implementation of those rights and how we really treat those communities. So I think that besides of giving rights to nature, it worth nothing more than the paper it is written on if there are no safeguards and guarantees to implement it, which needs good institutions to implement the regulation, good legal procedures, and the good approach from the society. We need the NGOs, the citizens' initiatives, active citizens, really to enforce what is included in any kind of rights for nature. And I think that it was already mentioned that, for example, the future generations, there are some proposals to set up institutions to protect the rights of future generations. So already some of the intellectual work has already been done, but we have to continue and also to keep in mind that besides of claiming for rights, with the same voice we have to claim for good implementation of those rights, which means institutions, which means legal procedures, which means access to justice, which means cooperation with NGOs. So I believe that finally this is a true intellectual endeavor to find the best solution, and some people might say that we should concentrate on improving our existing environmental legislation. I answer to those claims that these things are not in contradiction with each other, and we have to fight, and we are doing here in the European Parliament, to have the best possible regulation, but sometimes really we have to stop, to step back a bit and to start a more visionary, more long-term thinking about how to protect planet Earth, how to protect our nature. I believe that this is possible, and I wish the best courage for all of us to go on this way. And thank you very much again for the contributions, for participating in the conference, and for Munta for the initiative.
So there are people knocking at the door, so just the time to say thank you to all the speakers, to my colleagues, to all the people working on this event, and to all of you. Thank you.
Excuse me, everybody. There is a big meeting starting in about 5 minutes, and our secretariat needs to set up the room very quickly. So I'd like to kindly ask you to leave the room as soon as possible, because we need to clean it up. Thank you very much.